and gentlemen, we have one conference remaining in our season previews as the season tips off tomorrow, and it just means more. It means more in the SEC, and today that is what we are here to talk about. I am Tyler DeLuca. This is No Cap Space. If you had missed it prior, I had my thoughts on the SEC post here because I was an SEC preseason voter. I kind of went down into my votes, my player of the year, my all SEC teams, my power rankings, all within that video. You can find a link to that in the description below. But today we're looking at my good pal Andrew and his preview on NoCapSpaceWBB.com, where he has had the Big East, the Big 12, mid-majors, ACC, Big 10, and now the SEC. I'm going to look at what he had to say about some of these teams. I'll let you go and check out the entire article there on NoCapSpaceWBB.com, which you can also find in the description below as well. But let's dive into this right here, because the SEC is a conference that has 5 legitimate Final Four potential teams here, if not more, on a Cinderella basis. So I am so excited to watch SEC hoops this year for a multitude of reasons. But if anyone can try and dethrone South Carolina, that's ultimately the question here. And we're going to start with LSU, who, of course, went and got Mylasia Fulwiley. And also, we're close to being in the Final Four last year. This is a team that is super intriguing to me because I have worries of LSU past, but also the path forward is one that is incredibly clear based on the talent that they have. So what do I mean by that? That is LSU goes against Mylasia Fulwiley. And the fit isn't incredibly natural next to Michaela Williams and Flau'jae Johnson, but they're all so damn good. They're all so good that it's like, okay, well, you go in, you're going to go try and make this shake. You're going to try and make this work, right? Because when you're able to get that type of talent, you take that type of talent. Does that sound a little bit familiar to when Haley Van Lith came into LSU? A little bit. A little bit. And so I'm trying to find the balance in where LSU is with that, while also understanding that they're going to be very good. This is a Final Four contending team, and you go and get Kate Koval. You have some of these freshmen coming in, and that is to me what is going to be the make or break. I'm not really worried about the perimeter. I mean, if you go back to my stuff last season, I am such a big fan of Flau'jae Johnson in her game. Obviously, Michaela Williams is super cold. Mylasia Fulwiley, with presumably an extended role here at LSU, should be able to show off the skills that I think everyone has been hoping and waiting to see in maybe a bit more of a freer offense, freer system. And obviously what South Carolina is doing works. I'm not hating on that by any means, but it's just different and maybe fits Mylasia just a little bit better here at LSU. But ultimately it comes down to the 4s and the 5s on this roster that are, by all means, high recruits, have done it in high school, have earned this position to go and prove it, but they have to do that. And until we see that, I'm trying to figure out where exactly to put just LSU in general in terms of my expectations. But the expectation should be you want to make it to the Final Four, because that is what you're capable of doing. And you want to try and go push for an SEC top finish. That is the expectation at LSU, and it's a reasonable one to have with the talent on this roster. Next up, South Carolina. I mean, this is a team that I'm just simply done doubting until this is a program, like, there's no reason to doubt at all. Like, there's injuries, there's graduation. Until someone proves that they could go and be better than South Carolina, why would I say anything different in the SEC? Until someone can go and prove it. You go and get Tanaya Latson, who was my vote for SEC Player of the Year. I you have obviously Ashton Watkins, Chloe Kitts, both can be out for this season, but you won in the transfer portal. You have players that are ready to step up. I'm ready to see year 2 of Joyce Edwards, who we interviewed here on No Cap Space. So we got to talk about what that kind of looks like for her and what she has for her own expectations going into this season. That was before Chloe Kitts went down. So now it's even higher. It's even higher now. So I'm a believer, like, as everyone should be in South Carolina. And again, until someone proves that they can go and beat South Carolina, that they can go and take the SEC from them, there's no reason to think anything otherwise. But if there's going to be a team to do it, it's probably Texas. It's probably Texas. Look, they return a lot. You have Madison Booker, who, while the stats might not be like the flashiest just due to the system of Texas, Madison Booker is one of the coldest players in the entire country. And to me, this is an even better roster than last year. It's different. You're not just like throwing out the exact amount of size that you had last year, but ultimately, I think that this is going to be maybe a bit more of a balanced roster. You bring Roy Harmon back. You have Abria Cunningham coming in, right? Who just kind of replacing some of that size that graduated Taylor Jones. Aaliyah Crump, one of the top freshmen in the country. But I'm telling you, the player that I am watching for Texas to see, and it's something I was saying last year, Jordan Lee, and how she can maybe help space the floor. She came into Norman and lit Oklahoma up. And I was there and I saw it in person. I was like, where has this been in terms of floor spacing and just adding a bit of variety to the Longhorn offense? I'm very interested in what that looks like. And Crump could potentially add some of that as well. Andrew says here, the Longhorns are the favorite to win the conference. I'm not saying that they're not going to, but I'm just not putting anyone over South Carolina until it's time. And last in the teams, Tennessee. Kim Caldwell absolutely overperformed in year 1, right? And this unique system with the hockey line shifts of substitutions and things of that nature was like it was a complete shift from things that we had seen in the SEC. We had seen Oklahoma also come in last year with kind of like that fast-paced, high-powered offense, but that's not something that we have grown accustomed to, and Kim Caldwell does it in a completely different way. And so you have that, and you have a team that's added some depth. You have a couple of top recruits coming in, and you also have Talia Cooper, who is just simply one of the best players in the country. And you have all these things, and you have, honestly, what I thought was a pretty solid defensive system as well, generally speaking. You make it to the Sweet 16. Obviously, Tennessee, the standard is so incredibly high, but it's also a standard that has not been met in a minute. And so to go and get that finish in year 1 is massive. But you want to see a better record in the SEC. That was the biggest thing last year, where Tennessee kind of started going down a little bit, 8-8 in the SEC. If they can go and pick up some of those easier wins that they kind of fumbled through a couple times, you go and make a deep run in the SEC tournament, or if you go and make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, we're talking about Tennessee, who is already really doing well in recruiting and getting kind of feels like back on track. You're talking about this program potentially fully being quote unquote back. We'll see though. We'll see. But ultimately, another Final Four contending team here in Tennessee. Teams to watch. I said I had my whole video on the entire SEC. So we'll kind of just quick hit here for a lot of these. Then we'll get to the players to watch as well. Alabama rebuilding year. It certainly feels like that. You lose your 2 senior stars to graduation, both in the WNBA right now, in Aaliyah Nye and Sarah Ashley Barker. I like what is happening in Alabama generally, in terms of like the build and all of that, but you're going to have to try and persevere through graduations and losing your top players. And what that looks like is going to be very interesting to me in terms of seeing the trajectory, if you will, of this Alabama team. Kentucky as well is another one of those teams that, to me, this feels like a bit more of a rebuild here. Georgia Amore, obviously, not there anymore. Claire Strack, very, very good. Very good, and is going to win them games. But it felt like you kind of had like the stopgap here with Georgia Amore coming over with Kenny Brooks, and you have some injuries at the guard spot, as Andrew mentions there. I'm feeling that this is more of not like a full rebuild in terms of like, oh, they're gonna be just awful. Not that, but to me, that with the recruiting that they have and things like that, it's gonna be next year, where they can really kind of start to make waves with Strack there in Kentucky. Oklahoma. Let's see what Andrew has to say about Oklahoma. The Aaliyah Chavez era has arrived in the city of Norman. The city of Norman. Jenny Baranczyk retained most of her talent from last year's Sweet 16 team, including All-American center Reagan Beers and All Big 12 forward Peyton Verhulst. Chavez is as good as advertised, and the Sooners will have that missing piece guard to go along with the deep and talented front court. I agree. Look, this is another Final Four team here. Like that is the level of expectation that can be reached for Oklahoma. Again, obviously not all these teams are going to make the Final Four, but that is a level of talent on this team. But it's going to be a team that is so heavily reliant on freshmen. If you just look at the roster top to bottom, 11 players on this team for Oklahoma, 5 of them freshmen, 3 of them I really expect to play true minutes here in Aaliyah Chavez, Brooklyn Stewart, and Keziah Lofton. And depending on how well they can immediately translate their game, that is, to me, what is going to make or break this season for the Sooners. And I went and got to see their practice a little bit, and Aaliyah looked good in practice, but obviously that's just practice. And we're talking about practice, and so ultimately the very first test comes very early for Oklahoma. The second game of the season, they play in Sacramento, neutral site against UCLA. That'll tell us a lot about where this team stands, but if they go and pick up a win there, I'll be live after with expectations that are probably way too high. If they lose, maybe we temper it down a little bit. We're going to have a big test there early on with Oklahoma. Ole Miss is another team that I feel like has an outside chance at a potential Final Four run. And the reason I say that with this team in particular is Ole Miss is a team that has been steady, but hasn't been able to get into like that upper tier of the SEC. And that's a hard thing to crack. And so this is a team that has always been able to just do damage, it feels like, with their defense, but they have never had the true go-to scorers that they need on the offensive side to take advantage of that. So you go and get Caitlin Peterson from UCF, and you go and get Cody McMahon, right? And so now you have 2 players that can actually go and just get a bucket. And Ole Miss has had a bit of redundant rosters at time, I feel like, but this is a team that actually has some of the offensive prowess that Ole Miss has been desperately needing over the years, and I am excited about what this looks like for them. I think truly an outside chance at potentially making the Final Four. And the last team here, and the teams you need to watch, Vanderbilt. Look, no Camille Pierre. Michaela Blakes is still here. Okay, Michaela Blakes is one of the best players in the entire country, and that is what you're paying to see for Vanderbilt is Michaela Blakes, 100%. But on the back of Michaela Blakes, obviously that is the entertainment value. The margins and what is going to make or break Vanderbilt season to me from a wins and loss record perspective is the 2 bigs that Andrew notes here. Gwen Tonda and Del Rosario, the Texas and LSU transfer respectively. You need size in the SEC to a degree. And if you go into the NCAA tournament and have that size, that battle-tested size, and you are able to go and face some of these teams that there's obviously size in other conferences, but the SEC, it just means more, If you're able to go and take those bigs into the NCAA tournament, and they have breakout years, because these are 2 players that we haven't really gotten to see get a full head of steam in their college careers. But they both have the size. It's a need that Vanderbilt is going to have. They have to break out for Vanderbilt to have the win-loss record that reflects the talent of Michaela Blakes and what Vanderbilt has been building on in these last couple of years. I am incredibly intrigued by Vanderbilt. And if you told me Vanderbilt was making a deep NCAA tournament run or anything like that, I would just simply not be surprised. It's going to look different without Camille Pierre, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to completely change the expectation and standard depending on how these 2 bigs perform and break out now that they're kind of getting the runway to go and perform in this way. Again, we have the rest of the field here with some of these teams, and If you want to check that out, the link is down below in the description. A lot of these players I'd already touched on. Again, Madison Booker, one of the coldest players in the entire country. The mid-range is absolutely deadly. Flau'jae Johnson, just a pure athlete that can do a little bit of everything, frankly, on the court. And we saw her trying to do some of the point guard stuff. And ultimately, I think we're going to see more of Malaysia in that position, it sounds like, or Michaela Williams. We're going to have to figure out what the perimeter looks like. But ultimately, Flau'jae Johnson, one of the best players in the country as well, will likely be one of the top picks in the WNBA draft. And it's just one of the best hoopers to watch. I just like watching Flau'jae Johnson play. Ta'Niya Latson, I went super long on my SEC votes video. She is my player of the year vote. I just simply think this is exactly what South Carolina needs. Whenever Dawn takes a loss deep in the NCAA tournament, she has evolved. Ta'Niya Latson is that evolution on the offensive side for South Carolina. I expect her to score. I expect her to play make, and I think she's going to hoop. Reagan Beers. Look, this is a player that has expanded the game in terms of being able to take the threes and whatnot, but ultimately is a lot more of your quote-unquote traditional big back to the basket in that way. But that was more at Oregon State. And now she has shifted her play style to help run with Oklahoma, who is one of the fastest paced teams in the entire country. I think that by the end of the season, as Andrew mentions here, someone that should be higher on pre-draft lists in a very guard heavy draft, just in general. If you told me she raises up the board here in WNBA draft projections, I would not be surprised. And so one of the players you absolutely need to watch, and projected to make all SEC first team. And if you told me she's the best big in the SEC this year, it would not be a shock whatsoever. And last year on this part of the players list, Elijah Wiley, Hooper's Hooper, absolute bucket getter, absolute showtime. I cannot wait to see her at LSU. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, and that's part of the fun here from a viewer perspective, from my perspective of talking about the game. I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm ready to see it regardless. Now, the 5 players you need to know. If you have not tapped in with any of these players, listen and learn. Like I said, I mentioned Joyce Edwards. This is a player that was asked to do a lot of different things at different times last year for South Carolina. We talked about it with her in our interview. Again, you can find that here on No Cap Spaces YouTube. With no Chloe Kitts or Ashlyn Watkins, this is a very quick, pivotal year for Joyce Edwards to need to just step up and evolve, right? Obviously, just year 2. And the responsibility is going to be there for Joyce to have to do that. Michaela Blakes, if you don't know Michaela Blakes, I don't know what you're doing. Get out under your rock. This is one of the best scorers in the entire nation. And to me, there's no reason why she can't become a household name, especially given the fact that Juju Watkins is out hurt this year and Paige Beckers has left. If you're putting bets on like who becomes the next massive star in women's basketball, Michaela Blakes is a fantastic one to put there. Cody McMahon, I kind of touched on. Talia Cooper, I'd also touched on. Carnegie from Georgia. This is a player, as Andrew mentions, that can make or break a lot of things for Georgia. I didn't touch on Georgia as a team. You can find that in the article, but absolutely a player that you need to be watching for and knowing, again, because that really might be the make or break here for Georgia. And then some of the games here, I mean, we got cinema in the SEC. Like, these are all games here. I mentioned Oklahoma, UCLA. South Carolina versus Texas might help decide the SEC. Tennessee versus UConn is real hate, and you know we're here for that. Ethical hating here. South Carolina, LSU, real hate. Ethically, we must hate ethically, but real hate. And Ole Miss versus LSU, again, might be one of a deciding SEC game ranking-wise and whatnot. God, I'm so excited. The season is almost here, people. We are one sleep away from NCAA women's basketball being here. This concludes our conference previews here. Again, if you had missed any, you can find them here on the YouTube. You can also find the print versions on nocapspacewbb.com. All the links you need are down below. Make sure you are tapped in here because we are about to hit the ground running in this college season. We'll have lives, we'll have post games, we'll have boots on the ground. I am so ecstatic to be on this journey with you, and I hope that you choose to join us here at No Cap Space for the 2025-2026 NCAA women's basketball season on the road to the Final Four in Phoenix. Make sure you're tapped in here at all the links down below, our socials, our website, everything, and I'll talk to you soon.